Hello, welcome to my second ever vlog. This time I'm going to talk about something that's quite important to me. You may or may not have noticed, unlike last time, I have got a blue streak in my hair. That is because it is Dystonia Awareness Week. Dystonia is not a European country. It is a neurological condition that causes problems with movement. First things first, I'm going to apologise to everyone with dystonia watching this that has heard that joke a million times before. And secondly, I'm going to explain that. I'll give a brief overview of what I know about dystonia and then talk about my personal experience with it, because I know when I was diagnosed as a teenager, and when my condition got worse in my early 20s, I found it quite isolating, and that's kind of why I'm doing this video. And also just to let you know, even the movement disorder professors say that my form of dystonia is extra rare, and I'm still a bit of a mystery, so don't be scared or worried if anything I talk about doesn't seem like your dystonia, and even if it does seem like your dystonia, don't be worried or scared, because my life's pretty ace, and life can be awesome even though you've got this condition. So I guess I should explain what dystonia is. It is a neurological impairment, as I said, which is in a group of conditions called movement disorders. I think within them there's things like Parkinson's and different things, but this one affects a part of the brain that the many people think called the basal ganglia. I think that's how it's pronounced. And that bit of the brain seems to control your voluntary movement. In people with dystonia, that part of the brain is faulty, and it sends the wrong messages or doesn't send the right messages. And there also seems to be a role of dopamine in the condition, meaning that people tend to have too much or too little dopamine, causing problems with their movement. And the types of problems that it causes with movement are mainly spasms, sending too many messages to spasm, sending messages to use the wrong muscles when you tell your body to do something else. So for example, when I try and grip a pen, my hand will go into spasm and all the wrong muscles will tense up rather than the right ones. All my feet kind of constantly on tiptoes, because my brain sends lots of bad messages there. But there's lots of different types of dystonia. Some people can just have it in their neck, or in their hands or in their legs. I have what they think is early onset primary dystonia. But when I was born, which I know is unusual to have dystonia from birth, my feet were in kind of like the kids from the Rugrats cartoons, like toes turned in, and the doctors at the time thought it was an orthopaedic problem, so I had lots of operations, ones that aren't so fun, like external fixators. Maybe you want to Google them. They break your legs in lots of places and slowly try and straighten them over many months, using spanners and things to distract the bone. But luckily for me, it wasn't actually my bones that were the problem, it was my muscles that were pulling my body into weird positions. This was only noticed when I was 16, when the hospital noticed that they couldn't do much more for me, and sent me along for someone to have a look about amputating my legs, and that person noticed that a lot was wrong with my movement in general, especially my hips, and sent me to see lots of neurologists at 16, who had a look at lots of things. I went to a big meeting of 12 neurologists who all looked at me, and decided to send me up to the nearest city, because I lived in a small industrial town, where I saw a paediatric neurologist at 18, so 2 years later, and he brought in his specialist movement disorder professor friend, who took one look at me and said dystonia, and I started a whole host of treatment which made me feel a lot better, and I still use a wheelchair. I've used a wheelchair since I was 13, that does tend to happen when you've got dystonia around that age, for some people. My spasms just got too bad in my legs, that in the rest of my body, that I couldn't walk any longer, and unfortunately for me, and very unusually for dystonia, in my early 20s, my condition progressed to my upper body, even though it had been quite static in my lower body, and only very mild in my upper body, with some like kind of thing called writer's cramp, which just means when I try and grip a pen, my hand spasm. I think I mentioned it earlier, I hope I did. And yeah, so my dystonia is now in my arms, and lots of the places that I find quite frustrating, so I've started using an electric wheelchair, and I also need personal care assistance to help me out with things like transfers that I find really difficult, which is moving from your wheelchair to somewhere else, but apart from that, it's really not all doom and gloom. I have a job that I love with all my heart. I went to university and got a first, before my condition progressed into my arms. I also competed all around the world in wheelchair sport, in the rather butch sports of discus and shot put and javelin, yeah, I have a great group of friends. I have my own flat that I rent. I live independently with PA support, thankfully, and enjoy going to gigs. Due to go to Leeds Festival, if anyone's familiar with that in the UK, and I like volunteering. I help out at a locally run Radical library, and also with a Green Vest and an animal sanctuary as well, on top of my job, which is volunteer coordination within the environment. So yeah, I have a lovely busy life, so dystonia diagnosis is certainly not the end of the world, but it's certainly not easy, and do use the resources that are offered to you, to get in touch with other people, and I think I might stop with that. I think I've rambled a little bit. I hope I've explained a little bit about my journey with dystonia, and what it is, yeah, thanks very much.